All right, so I was randomly just surfing on Reddit one day, and then I came across this thread that said, what are your MBA unpopular opinions? And since I'm getting my MBA right now, my curiosity was piqued. And so I read through the thread, and I gotta tell you, it was straight fire, because if you know anything about Reddit, it's all anonymous, and so people on there just don't give a flying and so people were just roasting the MBA. And so in today's video, what I want to do is basically go through the different roasts from least spicy to spiciest. And I want to just give you my honest opinion and reaction to each of them. Personally, I love roasts, even if it's self-deprecating. So I think this is going to be fun. All right, let's start with number 1, which says grade non-disclosure means that people take the 80-20 rule too far and hinders actual learning. To give you some context on what this is saying, most MBA programs have a non-grade disclosure policy, which means that they won't show your grades to employers and are not allowed to, which basically just means that you don't have to worry about your grades. I would give this roast a spice level of 1 and a truth level of 10, and let me explain why. Regarding the spice level, I would just say that this roast is just not a hot take at all, because across all MBA programs with non-grade disclosure policy, which is the majority of them, students there will just tell you often about how they worked so little to pass the class or work on an assignment, or they barely even studied for any particular class and didn't have to do anything. And there's even sayings like C's get degrees, or if you have a 3 in front of your GPA when you graduate, then you did too much.
I was sick of nerds telling me what to do. It didn't make logical sense.
Now, to be fair, there are classes that are extremely interesting and taught by really great professors. There are also some people who go into an MBA program and really want to learn because maybe they don't have a business background. But for the vast majority of MBA students, especially in your second year, you realize that in the long term, it really won't matter what grade you got in a macroeconomic class or a communications class. What really just matters is that you pass. And that's how the MBA is structured. Regarding the truth level of 10, I do think that this is a very true statement. The way the MBA academic environment is structured really does hinder a lot of learning because it doesn't really encourage a lot of students to come to every single class fully prepared and just have their together basically. And the only caveat I would add to this is that it does allow you to actually focus in on the topics or classes that you really do enjoy, because you don't have to really worry about the rest. So there were some classes that I personally took where I really found a lot of value out of them and did kind of put in a good effort, or at least some effort, and I didn't for the other classes. So I do think that this is very much true overall, so that's why I gave it a 10 out of 10. All right, let's next go into number 2. Probably not unpopular. There is a chunk of people who will say they will step out of their comfort zone in business school and don't. They don't try something new, hang out with people different than them, etc., which is kind of sad because business school is probably the only chance they will have to be within such a diverse and open bubble. For this, I give it a spice level of 2 and a truth level of 9. And for the spice level, I think that it's also not really a hot take because this is true almost everywhere you go, right? If you just get put in almost any environment, you're just gonna go to the people that are similar to you. So I'm Korean. I hung out with a lot of Koreans who came from Korea and just Korean Americans. This past year during my year at Wharton, I hung out with a lot of Asian Americans because I'm Asian American. And I only hung out with a lot of non-Asians, honestly, because I'm in this something called the Lauder program, which puts you in a class or cohort with 70 people from all over the world. If I'm really being dead honest, if I didn't have that cohort, I probably would just honestly hang out with Asian people all the time. Also, I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like it's almost feels weird, or there's some sort of stigma for me to only hang out with Asian people, maybe because I'm living in the US and we are a minority. But if I look at a group of white people, I'm never like, oh my God, those white people only hang out with white people. But when I think about some conversations I've had with my friends, we do say oh, we should venture out and meet people of different races and etc., etc. I think that's probably good for me and I should do that. But there is this weird thing where if you're Asian and you do that, it's kind of weird. But if you're white, then it's not weird. I don't want to make this all about race or anything, but that's just a random thought I had. Let me know if you agree or if I'm just being kind of weird with this. Also, let me be clear. I have made friends who are not Asian. I hang out with them. And honestly, it's been really great just exploring other perspectives. And so I do think there's a ton of value in just having a diverse group of friends. And so I do want to make sure that's clear. But I gave this a truth level of 9 because I really do think that most people kind of just go to your group of people that you're comfortable with, right? And I'm a victim of that, and I need to push myself out of my own comfort zone a lot of the time. I gave it a 9 though, because I do see a lot of people who do mix around a lot. I don't know how to like put this in better words, but I think it's not a pure 10 out of 10 because I do think a lot of people do try new things at school, and I've seen them do it. And I'm trying to actively push myself to do that as well. So I didn't give it a full 10 out of 10, but 9 out of 10 because in general, I think it's a pretty true statement. Now, if you're watching this video because you just wanted to see the MBA program get roasted, then the next minute is probably not for you. But if you're watching this video because you're just interested in getting an MBA and want to just learn more about the program, and that's why you clicked on this video, then you might be studying right now for the GMAT, which for me was one of the biggest obstacles when I was applying for school. But I found a really great resource when I was studying for it called Target Test Prep, and that's the sponsor of today's video. I credit TTP a lot for helping me get a 750 on the GMAT, and what I really liked about it is that it takes a topic by topic approach to make sure that you're prepared for pretty much any question that comes up on the GMAT. Here's how it works. For both quant and verbal, TTP breaks down all of the individual topics that appear on the GMAT, and with them come lessons and practice tests ranging from easy, medium to hard that lets you hone your skills and master every topic. TTP is a one-stop shop that covers both quant and verbal sections of the GMAT, and it's the only company on GMAT Club with a triple-digit 5-star rating. If you're struggling with any part of the GMAT, TTP allows you to create your own customized study plan, which makes it so that you can tailor it to your own needs. And I credit TTP a lot for helping me get a high score on the GMAT, which helped me get into business school. And so if you want to check them out for 5 days for just $1, you can feel free to check them out using my link down in the description below. All right, let's next go into number 3. Married but available / turkey drop is vastly overstated and rarely affects people who were actually serious to begin with. To explain this one a bit, married but available, the first letters correspond to MBA, get it? And then turkey drop is more of a worldwide phenomenon. It's not just for the MBA, but basically you start your semester in the fall, and then after a few months, you get to meet everyone and you start kind of thinking, oh, is the person that I'm with better than my current significant other? Right? And then so you kind of look at everyone, and then around Thanksgiving and Christmas when you have to like go see family and stuff, and that's when you start really thinking about, oh, is this person I'm with the one for me, right? And if it's not, then you drop him or her. So that's like the turkey drop. For this, I'd give it a spice level of 3 and a truth level of 8. And I give it the spice level of 3 because this is kind of a nice statement, right? This is saying that most people who come in with their significant other don't actually leave with a different person at the end of their MBA program. And I think this is mostly true, actually. There's a lot of really serious relationships where partners move into the actual city and kind of live with that person, or there are people doing long distance. They're actually, the majority of people that I know who come in with relationships are still in them. And so I think in general, if you have had a secure relationship before your MBA, then it probably still will be throughout your MBA. But there is a, let's say, cohort of people who are not faithful. And so that's why this is not a 10 out of 10. This is like an 8 out of 10. I've personally seen some people cheat. I've seen people get really sloppy. And so those people have their problems. Honestly, I think the people who cheat would probably cheat if it was for the MBA or not. I think it's just a lot more tempting because there's like drinking happening every week. There's parties happening. And so if you don't have like a solid foundation in your relationship, then bad things are going to happen. And so that's why I gave this an 8. All right, moving on to number 4, wealth. Incredible wealth disparity. People flying to exotic places for 2 to 3 days, renting yachts, posting photos of business class, flexing Mercedes S-classes, etc., alongside those who don't even go out much because their budget simply doesn't allow for it. It's just like the world, except the wealthy are represented a lot more. For this, I'd give it a spice level of 5 and a truth level of 7. And for the spice level, I mean, doesn't it just sound a little spicier because people love hating on rich people? For the truth level, I gave this a 7, which is the lowest so far that I've given. And the reason for this is, while it is true, like there are a ton of people who come from incredibly wealthy families. And I oftentimes have been in situations for the first time in my life where I'm like, wait, your dad is who? Or your grandpa is who? Or your mom is from what family? Right? And I'm just thinking to myself like, wow, you must be incredibly rich. But I wouldn't say that they're overrepresented. There is not like a group of mean girls type of popular kids who just run the entire show because there's just so many of us, right? At least for Wharton, there's 800 per class, which is on the larger end. And I think it gets as small as 1 to 200. But like I mentioned, like there's just so many people like kind of running their own lives, doing their own thing, that no one is going to care if you like take a weekend trip to Spain or if you have like a fancy car. It's just really not that important for most people. And if it is, then that's kind of your problem, because like, why do you care so much? With that said, I will say business school is really expensive and there are a lot of costs that really add up. And I think this can take some people by surprise, because I came in kind of knowing I'm probably going to be spending somewhere between like 10,000 to 15,000 on just fun. And if you come into business school not really expecting that, and you have to take out loans in order to fund that fun, and you're not comfortable with that, so you don't, or whatever your situation may be, then a lot of these costs really add up. So I do understand that part. All right, let's next go into number 5, which is that most MBAs are not particularly bright and compensate for this fact with bottomless enthusiasm. Okay, honestly, I thought this one was so funny because it's just such a funny statement. Most MBAs are not particularly bright and compensate for this fact with bottomless enthusiasm. I know this is a roast about me because I'm an MBA student, right? But I don't know, I just think it's really funny. But anyway, I would give this a spice level of 7 and a truth level of 7. Spice level of 7 because this person clearly just does not care about MBAs at all and what they feel. And then the truth level of 7, I would say that it is kind of true. Like a lot of times in your classes, people are extremely confident, even if they have almost no idea what they're talking about because they didn't do the reading. But I would say that a lot of the people who I meet in MBA programs, at the very least, are hard workers. They got to the particular MBA program because they have checked off a bunch of boxes. They've had good careers. They're able to kind of grind their way to where they are now. Now, are they the top of the top of the top, like smartest people I've ever met? I would say probably not, but still, there are a lot of really, really smart people in my program that I honestly really respect. All right, moving on to number 6, another one. Stop kidding yourself that you're going to pivot to the social sector after a brief stint in IB or consulting. Find another reason to make you subconsciously hate yourself and your lack of soul less.
But also, I'm dying inside.
Man, after I read this one, I was like, oh, shit. And also at the same time, this kind of hits too close to home. I would give this a spice level of 9 and a truth level of 9. And let me explain. Spice level, kind of obvious. Like, this is just straight fire. I don't know. Truth level of 9, speaking from my own experience. When I was back in college, a young 18, 19, 20-year-old, I always thought I'm going to go into banking or I'm going to go into consulting. And then that'll be my stepping stone to later do something that I truly care about and kind of change the world. That was how I thought back then. And honestly, a lot of my MBA classmates think the exact same way now. Now, let me be clear, this is not all my classmates, because honestly, a lot of my classmates have no idea what they're going to do after IB or consulting, and they are just completely honest about that. Another group of people are just like, yeah, I'm going to do IB, I'm going to make a lot of money, pay off my loans, and then I'll figure out what I want to do, but it'll probably be somewhere in finance. And then some people in consulting are like, yeah, I want to do this for a bit, and then make partner, or I want to do this and then maybe join a tech company. So there are a lot of different paths that people take. But I will say there are some people with really strong voices who talk about how they want to go into these traditional paths and then eventually do kind of some sort of social good. I think it is fair in the sense that if you have loans in particular, you do have to pay off those loans somehow, right? But speaking from my own personal experience, you just get those golden handcuffs once you're in some kind of professional industry where you're making a good amount of money. And it's really, really hard to leave eventually, because especially if you're getting an MBA, in your 30s, you're probably going to have a family unless you decide not to, marry anyone and just be like a career man or woman. So I would say that if I had to bet on most people, they're probably not going to do that social good until they're probably like in their 50s, 60s, 70s. There are also very, very few alumni from Wharton who I've met who are in that kind of like nonprofit social sector. The vast majority, I would say, are in some kind of like investing firm or tech company, bank, consulting firm, etc. So that's why I gave this truth level a 9, because I think it's pretty true and, like I said, hits home for me. All right, last but not least, number 7, the most spiciest one of today's video is the MBA, even top programs, is a filter for risk-averse, unremarkable people whom the vast majority will spend their careers in middle management making unremarkable decisions. The real leaders who will make a difference in the world are smart enough to know that they don't need an MBA to do it. Man, if I had a mic, I would just drop it in front of an audience of MBAs who are just looking shell-shocked at this person, except that it's an anonymous person on Reddit, so kind of just like a keyboard warrior. Anyway, I would give this a spice level of 10 because it just completely shits on the MBA, and then I would give it a truth level of 8. Risk averse, I think this is pretty true. A lot of the people who go into an MBA program come from pretty traditional backgrounds like banking, consulting, tech, etc., and they just come from normal corporate jobs, right? And so they come from those jobs, and then a lot of them take out a huge amount of debt. So you have to get a kind of normal, well-paying job in order to pay off that debt, which kind of makes you risk averse for the first years after you graduate. And then you have a family, so then like other competing priorities happen. And so risk averse, I would agree with, but unremarkable, I would say not really. I think this roast overall is pretty elitist where, I think most people who come out of MBA programs have pretty good jobs. And if you look at like the grand scheme of most jobs are in the upper quartile of people who have like interesting or good jobs that make some level of impact in their communities or at the company they work in. That's why I knocked this down a few points from 10 to 8. But the true part is really in this last sentence where it says, the real leaders who will make a difference in the world are smart enough to know they don't need an MBA to do it. And I think this is true largely. Most people really don't need an MBA, right? It's an optional degree. And so I think there is a ton of use for a lot of people who get the MBA. They're in MBA programs because they know they can get a positive ROI. I think what this is alluding to is like the Elon Musks of the world or Steve Jobs, etc. These people who are really making a huge change in the world just start their own companies and they don't need an MBA. And if you want to start your own company and make a huge difference in the world, you don't need an MBA. So that's why I think this statement is very true for the most part. But for the part where it looks down on MBAs and like they're unremarkable, there's a ton of great leaders who did get an MBA. And so that's where I kind of balanced this statement out a bit. And, but yeah, I thought it was pretty spicy. All right, this has been the most blunt I've been in pretty much any video I've made so far. So if you enjoyed this kind of video and want more, then please let me know down in the comments below. Send this video to a friend, press that like button for me because it really helps with the YouTube algorithm. And the last thing I want to mention is just that I know I've been roasting the MBA, but I'm not an idiot. If I didn't think the MBA program would give me a positive ROI or just wouldn't be a great experience, then I wouldn't have gone into an MBA program, right? And so that's kind of my little segue into letting you guys know that if you're watching this video because you're interested in getting in an MBA program, then I'm building out my own how to get into MBA course and have been working really hard on it, giving 50% discounts for people who sign up early using my link down in the description below. Feel free to check that out. Lastly, you're going to see on the next screen a week in the life of an MBA video. If you're curious after all this roasting, what does an MBA actually do on a day-to-day basis? So check that video out if you're interested. With that said, thank you all so much for watching. Hope to catch you all in the next video, hopefully the next roast. Thanks and peace out.